What's up everyone, and welcome to the guide on how to get your hands dirty if you want to start building some loadout definitions or make some for yourself or for the guilds or maybe editing something that already exists, right? There's always some solid room to tweak to your heart's desire. And yeah, we're gonna do a kind of simple, kind of long walkthrough of what I would say is kind of one of the more known 5v5 PvP clocking teams, which is Imp Troopers. I assume that they will change with the new meta, so, keep in mind that it's a little bit outdated potentially. But I think it's one of the more known pieces of math out there. If you're watching this, chances are you might have, assigned these requirements to your guild in the past. So, yeah, I think let's head down to, it's currently called the Playground Beta. As I believe it's released, you will also see it as a Playground Beta. But then, give it a little bit of time, it will just become the new Playgrounds. So here we are. To start off, let's just go ahead and click the Remove All button up here. Everything will turn gray. You will see that means nobody is currently selected right now. From here, let's just go ahead and go to the dropdown. You can type in Imp Trooper as well. I'll just select Imperial Trooper, and here we have them. We're going to go ahead and click the Include button at the top left of each character that we intend to include in this loadout. And honestly, we could probably do this a little bit easier in basic view. It's bad habit. I really like the advanced view, but I mean, hey. Probably best if we use both here, because each one has its own strengths, right? You don't have to do nearly as much scrolling here, and also it's mobile friendly. That being said though, I do kind of prefer working in advanced mode. You do have the option to do the work from here, but to me, maybe this would be more mobile friendly, but I am kind of content, and I do kind of prefer. And once we have the character selected, we are going to go ahead and click Include, ink up here with this checkbox next to the search bar, and this means that now, as you can look again, the only characters we can see are the ones we have selected. Right. One last thing for the basic mode as well, you can drag these characters around. This is the priority order that the bot will use to handle trooper speeds from top to bottom. Now, this isn't always the case. There is a setting. If you go into Automate, you will see Auto Reorder Unfailed Target. This will mean that it will try to use the priority you set, and if something breaks, it will try to make it work. It will start moving the priority around, and because it has derived requirements, breaking priority orders won't necessarily mean, like, if we have Piet based off of Gideon, it could still try to make that work if it's struggling to give Piet the right mods, but Gideon could maybe do it otherwise, a different way. These can all kind of work together. For now, we're going to be just doing single target automations to test each of our settings, so we'll leave this off, but if you're fine with a little bit of extra time, and I would just kind of recommend having this on once you're kind of doing your final automates. Anyway, let's back out, and let's get started. Starting with the big man, the clock of the hour. So we start off in the stat screen. We will come back to that in a second, but if we're starting from scratch, we will go to the required stat targets. Required meaning it has to try to hit these. If it can't, it will result in a failure. And let's just pick a random number. Let's just say 360. Depending on the guild you're in, this might be slow, this might be fast. But I think it's just a nice even round number to work with. And even if you wanted, we could set a desired minimum, the exact same thing. Let's just say 370, right? Sure. We have the primaries here. I don't really feel, because this is mostly just a speed chasing character in this case, we can say must use speed set, and that's fine. And in this case, let's go back to the stats now. These are the weights that tell the mod what you are hunting for. This is, you can be as specific or unspecific as possible. It is simultaneously kind of an untechnical system. You can just say, hey, I really want speed. Also, hey, I really don't want protection. This is kind of the optimal way if you were planning to use troopers against Eternal Emperor. This was kind of the consideration, and you could just start with this. Now, I've done 2 tests so far, and actually, let's just get rid of the desired. Let's just keep the 360 minimum. We know that Gideon can achieve much higher than this. I guess let's just say speed arrows only. Save it some grief. And now let's just hit automate. There is a decent shot. We will explain the weight in a second. Okay, it's actually adhering to the minimum again. That is surprising to me. So this speed weight, we just set this to max, right? What does that mean? It's doing 2 things. So, usually, I have experienced that if I just give it a minimum, and I give it a really, really high speed weight, it will start to take some creative liberties. We can also, if we're, worried about waste not, want not, we can start to set a maximum, and we can be as aggressive or unaggressive as possible. If you are building a loadout for other people, I would caution you to be careful about doing something like minimum 360, maximum 360. If you're using this for personal use, I actually would kind of do this a lot, because if I say, hey, I want my Gideon 363, I don't want it to be 364. That 363 is there for a reason, and any extra speed there is kind of wasted for my purposes, right? So this is you are literally telling this, I only accept this speed. If you don't have a whole lot of high-end speed depth, you might not have a combination of speeds that can land on 360 exactly for the purposes of this loadout. So again, if you're developing for maybe a guild of people, just in general, or just to share in general, right? We do have a friend share option. I would say be a little bit careful about setting really, really narrow ranges like this. I think a 3 or 4 range is probably safe, and even like 1 or 2. Like 2 is maybe safe enough. Let's try it now. We set a maximum. We give it a cap. We'll still stick at 360. I believe we still have the max speedway possible there. Actually, man, I am shocked. I have known the bot. I have actually recorded a take of this guide with the bot taking creative liberties. But speaking of creative liberties, this is the other purpose of these speed weights. So let's say we have dreams of our own. Let's say I had decided that I will not be happy unless I can achieve a 390 speed Gideon. Right? To the moon, we say. And we go back and look, we still do have speed weight set to 100. If we automate with a 100 speed weight, you will say, hey, we couldn't really make it. Now, one small point. We do have some extra influence in here. If we remove this and it has a failed target, but we have speed set to max, it will actually just solve for and crunch for the fastest Gideon we can build. It gives us 382. This is quite literally my speed cap right now. It is doing the work for me. I can tell you right now it's correct. 382 is the fastest Gideon I can build. You can just like go hunting and like optimizing for the best character you can build this way. It's not bad, right? But you know, it's not necessarily what I'm looking for. I think we could return it back to normal. A couple more demonstrations here. So let's say it still has what should be a impossible target. And let's say we're like, maybe we don't really want it to go that hard on speed. Maybe if it misses, that's kind of okay. For whatever reason, that's your opinion. So you drop down the speed, weighting by a lot. You will notice it still returns at 382. Why is that? Well, everything else is still set to 0. So everything else is literally still worthless, and speed is the only thing with any value whatsoever. So this still reads to the bot as speed is incredible. We want all the speed we can possibly get. So what if we start to do our thing? What if we kind of tell the bot, hey, speed's not all that important to me. Again, I think you will probably want to max this out in some situations, but for demo purposes here, let's just go something like this. Bit of this, bit of that. Sure. We're getting a little bit fancy here. Now, let's run it, and let's miss. Let's see what happens. You will notice our speed has nosedived significantly from our 390 aspirations. It is still grabbing a little bit of speed. We did still tell it to care a little bit about speed, but we even see a speedless up here, right? If anything, the speed that it's choosing, you'll notice, corresponds more to the stuff we weighted highly, right? We told it health, offense, defense, and hey, this cross, you will notice health, offense, defense, right? Even though we actually ended up with a decently fast Gideon, it's actually not because of the speed at all. And you can kind of tell from that square. It's just doing this. Hey, look at this arrow, for example, right? The defense is insane. The offense is there. It's just going hunting for those stats, and kind of what you see is what you get. So, again, let's go back. Even with the weights, I would still expect it's a little bit more restrained, surprisingly. We gave it a lot more extra to chew on, so it's not just going crazy for speed, but still, right? You can look at this, you can see a 27 next to a 16, next to a 17, next to a 22. This is just all over the place. I would never want a character to be modded like this. So let's get rid of the impossible target, just in general. it's best to try to avoid impossible targets where possible. Great. But if we return him to 360 and we have some more reasonable weights, let's see how this does now. And this actually looks like a pretty good Gideon to me, right? We haven't really given it much specific to work with yet, so we could definitely go in, take a little bit more control. But we do, you know, if we were using Imp Troopers against Eternal Emperor, this is a pretty small protection pool. We could go even harder and just say, really, like, protection is absolutely nothing to me. If you really wanted, you could even go look up your Gideon's base protection and tell it, like, hey, I don't know, if Gideon had like 63, you could even say like 63,000 or whatever, right? You could tell it like, hey, I will not accept anything below +0. Or in this case, you could also just kind of leave it as is. Maybe we go into primaries. I don't know, maybe just... Generally, your weighting will kind of knock this out for you. But if you feel so inclined, you could go do this. Must use all speed set. Maybe you have preferences for like health or defense set. And maybe you have preference for no broken sets. In this case, I'm pretty open about it. I kind of just wanted to hit the speed with like the lowest speed it's got. And you might not necessarily have like the best defense set speeds lying around. So let's just kind of leave this as is. I think you could kind of leave this off here unless you do have a specific, you know, requirement. I think that this is a Gideon I'm pretty okay with. And yeah, you know, maybe you have some other goals, you know, desired. If you wanted to say, again, let's kind of bring back the 3. Let's just say 370. Let's go 378. All right. I know that's a speed I can hit. But yeah, it will try to reach that 378. If it can't, then it will default back to the minimum. Oh yeah, there you go, right? We got that 378. It's still doing a pretty decent job overall of keeping speed weights pretty flat. And yeah, this is what the speed smoothing setting is. The speed smoothing setting is basically telling it like, hey, I want you to try to keep all of these secondaries as close to the average as possible. In fact, we did a lot of fancy business here. I think if we can just go back to doing this a little bit, let's say maybe give it a cap of... The problem with the cap here is it does reach to the desired. So you will see if we tell it 370, even though we have a desired minimum of 378, it will still get hard capped by the required. So maybe you would say 379 here, right? Or something like that. You could also do that here. But maybe like for whatever reason, 378 is your target. You just know that that's what it needs to be. There were a few cases where I actually have had to mod a Gideon this fast, but you wanted to make sure that that was it. You can implement that cap as a kind of a restriction, right? And you can see, yep, 26 average kind of across the board, 25s and 26s. Not bad. You know, the crit damage will be a wasted stat here, but we haven't really told the bot not to do it. We could actually go in and we do have a crit damage slider here. We could tell it like, hey, don't bother. Stuff like that. Otherwise, you know, I think it kind of, it's as hands-on or hands-off as you want to be. In this case, I'm kind of content to leave it hands-off. If you want to go in and control that stuff, that is absolutely your option. But for the purposes of the guide, I think let's keep moving forward here. I say as I'm forcing the bot to struggle through it. All right. Let's keep moving. Piets. All right, this is where things will start to get a little bit more complicated. Now we need to start doing relative character speeds. If you have done this work before, you will be much familiar with the right side operator section here, which is where we start to do speed modifications. So you will notice up here, currently this just says Admiral Piet speed. This is where it will tell you what the target right now is currently looking for. So let's go through the song and dance. Let's say plus 20 for the Veers lead, times 0.9 for the 10% terminator gains, and then minus 20 to remove the Veers lead from the final target. You will see, despite the fact that we have entered this operator, this has not changed yet. It's not bugged. What it's doing is waiting for you to tell it what you wanted to do with it, which is handled up here. We have the minimum and the maximum as we used it with Gideon, but now it has more of an important role. So if we type 0 into this requirement here, you can see, we screwed up slightly. If you do minus here, make sure you're not typing negative 20. Small clerical error, but it's plus 20, right? If you double minus. So, this being a Terminator train team, we have selected a minimum of 0. We are looking for the bare minimum for Piet to continue the Terminator train. Let us also make sure we click round up. That is just a way to make sure that we're being safe, that there are some rounding numbers that will just kind of crash your team and you will just lose too much speed. And the Terminator train could potentially be broken if you were fighting an enemy that was one speed below you, for example, which, you know, in territory wars can happen decently often. So we have this equation. This is, you know, this is Piet. And if we know Piet, we also know the same thing as Gideon. In this case, we can negative weight protection for a purpose that we'll get to in a little bit, but otherwise, you know, I think same thing. Piet is still a character who wants a lot of speed. I think we still crank speed to 100 here, just in case any guildmates struggle to hit it. You know, we can maybe wait for a little bit of physical damage, maybe a bit of potency, maybe a bit of defense. You know, sky's kind of the limit here, right? Maybe crit chance, maybe not. You know, if you're fighting Malik, maybe you don't necessarily want Gideon or Piet to have more. Maybe just type that back to 0. You will see advanced here as a toggle. This just lets you type it in. I don't really fully understand it, and I'm kind of content to just drag around sliders anyway. I would say don't necessarily worry about that. And yeah, this is a pretty decent looking Piet to me so far. So I don't think we necessarily need to set an exact minimum speed. Maybe if you knew, I don't know. Maybe for some reason you just had a purpose. This is kind of more for like 3v3, but maybe you knew that in some cases you kind of needed Piet to be like 341. We could go to desired and maybe write that here. For how you would usually use troopers, I'm not too worried about that, but the option is certainly there. And yeah, same deal. Let's make sure must use speed set, just to kind of save a little bit of time. You could, again, do the same song and dance of like, maybe you want this, maybe, depending on your purpose, you could actually want a crit damage Piet. If you knew maybe you're fighting DR, there's a little bit more damage at it, right? You could go along these lines, or you could handle this via waiting. We did have a crit damage weight that we haven't really selected at all. So it's going to say, okay, we have the option to do crit damage, but how much do you care about it? Well, looks like you don't really care, right? We see this 0 crit damage weight. You could kind of add that in here. I think maybe we'd end up keeping it a little bit lower. You know, situational, for sure. And then from here, you know, you could, if you really wanted, you could start to do stuff like minimum critical chance, right? That is an option here. I don't remember if he's physical or special off the top. I almost feel like he's special, but you have the option to choose either way, is the entire point. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward here, right? This is, Piet's pretty simple here. There's not a whole lot fancy to say. Just making sure, again, the proper way to do troopers before was making sure Piet just avoided protection where possible for what is going to come in a couple of characters. So next on the block, we're doing proper troopers. We kind of do a 2-for-1, right? We have anti-Eternal Emperor, we have anti-DR. So we're going to do another compare. Piet's easy, he's at the top. We can just type in the minimum 0 immediately. And it's the exact same song and dance. Plus 20, in this case, Stark after Piet is getting 20% Terminator, so it's times 0.8. And then another minus 20. Same deal, let's round up. And in this case, we don't really need to worry about protection that much. Maybe we could go for a little bit of speed focus. Stark doesn't really need all that much speed. He's not too hard to hit. Let's just say, kind of want some potency on him, kind of want some crit chance on him. Maybe, yeah, probably, maybe even crit damage, if it's available. Not all that important, but not that bad, right? You can go as in-depth or not in-depth here, as you kind of desire. So, what you want to do here, you can do crit damage triangles only, offense potency, protection probably not a bad idea, speed, maybe even offense. His target speed, we'll see in a second, is not all that crazy. And then, yeah, if you want to have the bot do an option select between two competing sets, so let's say we know we want offense or crit damage, or maybe even speed. I mean, we could include speed, and with a pretty low speed weighting, it could be reached for if necessary, but won't necessarily feel obligated to. And then what no outside sets means is it will fill in with whatever option it has available from this package. Now, in this case, I think potency would probably be a common thing for people. For my personal loadout, I know that I've got pretty decent potency overall, right? And if we wanted to give him a desired or required potency target, we can do that, right? We could say desired potency 90. That's going to be a little bit steep to reach. And because my potency depth is so low, I know that the mods that I have belong to the people. So I'd be a little bit nervous, I guess, to give this to people. But the show goes on. You kind of have to decide, I think, pretty early on whether this is a loadout that you're designing for the public or for sharing, or if you want to start, I don't necessarily want to call it cheating, but you can start setting very custom tweaks if you know your mod collection pretty well. You can kind of start, maybe you take off the crit chance set, and maybe you leave the potency set on because you know that you have a really nice potency set with high crit chance that you would prefer the bot to reach for, and then maybe you'd like jack up the crit chance. Random examples like that, right? But I think for here, let's see the crit chance on, let's see the potency on. Let's let the bot kind of do whatever, right? This is just a one-off example. We didn't automate it yet, but I could do it just to show that the automate works fine there. Okay, so we see the result is Stark has a pretty low requirement here. This actually feels like it might be a little bit wrong. We have this is the danger. We have a dependent character, and because we skipped the automate here, I mean, technically what you would usually do is you would just get every character set up. This is kind of a little bit backwards since I'm going through each character one by one. Yeah, normally I would just go in at everyone's settings and then hit automate all at once. Or what you could do is hit continue for Piet, and then it would start doing everything below Piet. In this case, let's just do this as proof. I'm just trying to demonstrate that the bot will do what you give it to do. Right? Well, let's see. Moving right along here, we're probably gonna be like 250s, 260s range, 274. And yeah, I don't necessarily demand the best stuff on Stark. It actually did reach for a speed set, which kind of surprises me. I think in this case, I'm kind of content to take it out. Stark at like 270s does not really demand some crazy offense or crit damage mods. And otherwise, we see it's hitting the speed target. We see it's hitting the potency target we gave it even. Depending on the situation, that potency actually could matter for Stark, right? That is, he does have defense down on basic, and that could matter against a beefy Sith Trooper and that whole sort of thing. But let's see. If the minimum is 268, we left speed kind of low here. Maybe playing a dangerous game, some people could try it and be like, well, I failed the target and my Stark is just like 200 or something like that. But I think the lower a character's expected speed range becomes, the less you kind of have to worry about that speed target or having to set caps. I mean, caps still, I don't think necessarily ever hurt, but for now we see the bot is kind of behaving itself, right? We haven't really needed to do many caps yet. Death Trooper. I think same thing. Let's just go to required real quick. Let's just do the dirty work. Moff Gideon plus 20. Nope. Click the wrong one. Times 0.7 minus 20. Depending on how you run your troopers, you might be doing this a little bit differently. But for the most part, yeah, same deal here. We're going to round up, make sure that we're preserving the turn meter terrain. And there's a few considerations here, right? Death Trooper is one of the first characters that has more he's concerned about, right? What we can do, there is a check that you normally had to do with Piets. Again, Piets at the top, he's nice and easy. And yeah, we don't need any uppers or anything. We're just making sure Death Trooper protection is greater than or equal to Admiral Piet protection +1. By setting a min of 1, this is where the +1 is coming from, right? Instead of just saying we want to be equal, minimum is just kind of adding it. You could also do this technically on like here. But you do, right? You still need the minimum 0. You can, again, tackle this a few ways. Actually, I think technically wouldn't this be the opposite? Wouldn't this end up being 1 under? Anyway, my preferred way to do this, I am no mathematician by any means. My preferred way to do this is just set min 1. You can see what that means. It's just greater or equal to Piet +1. And because we gave Gideon or Piet such a low protection weighting, that means that we don't even necessarily need to do this whole sort of thing, I don't think. I mean, you could leave the potency cross on, certainly. And we could just go speed potency sets. And I think that's really all you need to do. I mean, we could do some weighting here. The problem is, I don't think I actually want Death Trooper to go that crazy on protection. I'm kind of down for it to just hit the minimum target and then stop. But let's say, maybe we want to focus on some physical damage, maybe we want some potency. And depending on the purpose, he might be fighting Eternal Emperor and he wouldn't be able to crit. He might be fighting DR teams and maybe you could want him to crit. Usually I think you don't necessarily see that too often. Let's just leave that a little bit low. Speed, we're kind of whatever on. Let's leave that a little bit low. Yeah, I don't think we need to do anything all that fancy here, right? You could definitely tweak him to be more of a critter, more of a damage dealer. It's kind of up to what you expect him to be fighting against. But yeah, we do have the two main checks that I associate with death, and the relative stats would kind of dictate who goes next here. So yeah, we have what should be pretty straightforward Death Trooper. I don't remember if I told it to round up. I might have missed round up on one of the last few characters as well, but I think we're making a pretty good pace here. All right. Yeah, this looks pretty much on point to me. My potency set depth is pretty bad, so we do see the smoothing. Again, the speed smoothing is kind of trying to make sure that you're not going to have like a 27 speed next to a 5 speed. You know, if you don't have a lot of mods to choose from, it will kind of, you know, raise some complaints. Let's see. So we have 55,000 protection. What is Piet at? Piet has 0 edit protection. Again, we told it not to do that. And yeah, we can see. So we see that Piet has 54,622. We are about 700 over. What we could do, actually, if we really want to avoid giving Death any extra protection possible, we could negatively weight it. He still has the minimum, so he still has to try to reach that, but you can basically tell the bot, hey, take whatever you need to get to that spot, and I want nothing else. And that should be a pretty effective little trick here. It should just be able to do this. It might take a minute. Again, it has to meet a protection requirement, but because we weighted it so negatively, it's going to see those mods probably near last. So the automate will take a little bit longer on this, but if you're just trying to kind of save some of your best mods, this could be a tricky way to do it. And here we go. We are now, I mean, we saved 300 protection. Palpatine is stealing 25% of that. We have denied Palpatine 70 protection. How about that? I mean, you know, it's just a technique, right? That is something that could end up mattering in the future for other loadouts. Just kind of a neat trick, right? You wouldn't necessarily think of negative weighting combined with required, but it's also just a way to double down. You can do the same thing with speed, by the way, if you just want to make sure that the bot does not go over. But again, from what I showed you with the failed targets, speed tends to be one of the targets people will fail more often than not. And if you fail a speed target with negative weighting, it's probably just going to give the character speedless or like close to it, right? So you're playing with fire for sure there, but I'll leave it in just as, I mean, it's a demo. This is not going to be the loadout that's offered publicly. And Dark Trooper, a man with simple tastes. All right, Dark Trooper's done. No. So we're going to do the same thing. Let's pull up the man himself, Moff Gideon, plus 20 times 0.6, minus 20. Minimum 0, round up, and that's the effective speed. And we can be as controlling or not controlling as we want, right? We did give it a little bit of speed and a lot of offense, but if you know you have like a nice offense speed arrow that you don't necessarily want to give to Dark, he doesn't have to be fast for this specific type of calculation. You could tell it, hey, just don't bother. Like, just give me the offense arrow. If you know you've got one lying around. The problem is, I think, from my mods, it will actually reach for... We'll potentially try to reach for a greedy speed arrow that I definitely don't want to give to him. We'll see what it does. And it actually does not. It managed to restrain itself, but it also let itself go in some other respects. Interesting. I mean, this is kind of my offense cap for the triangle. Like, I know we're going to see that and think like, ooh, it grabbed a 20 speed. To this bot, the 20 speed, because we weighted it so low, you know, we can see it's like, it's the only thing scored, but like not by much. The reason why it did that is because that is the highest flat offense secondary triangle that I have. We could maybe bump up the weighting average or smoothing factor. I've always left it at 30 as an arbitrary number. Let's see if we just crank it up. Okay. A much more aggressive speed weighting does seem to be doing the trick there. And, you know, depending on how in-depth you want to get with your Dark Trooper, let's go to physical damage. And let's just say like 11,000 minimum. But also, let's say we want to do some pushing. Let's say, I don't know, 12,000. Let's see if the bot can find a Loadout for our Dark Trooper. That is actually capable of 12,000 damage. Okay. It made an effort. Actually, I don't see it as failing the desired. Oh, this is speed. Hold up. One more try. That is very strange to me. It is reaching for that speed arrow that I knew it would cheat on. This is a spot where if you were making the loadout for your personal adjustments, I think that there are some ways that we could try to discourage it from doing so. I think part of it is just kind of how strict we made the automate. 30 has been a value. It's an arbitrary number I chose, but it has kind of worked fine for my purposes. But I think in my case, for my personal bot loadout usage, I know I've got an offense arrow. I would really prefer it to not use this, so I would probably choose offense primary here. Or what we could even do is arguably just maybe set speed to 0, wait. Because not everyone has an offense arrow, right? Let's try this. Let's go back in. Let's automate. Now, at this point, it will see a speed arrow with offense. Really nice offense secondary, and the speed should be effectively meaningless to it, right? It's just going to see 8% offense versus 6%, and it's going to say, well, clearly, the 8% is better. And here we go. All right, this is pretty close to what I'm looking for. Again, I'm a little bit yikes about the fact that we're hitting this 20. This would be a spot where you could go in and manually change it, or we could, again, like maybe, let's try a smoothing factor of like 50. Still landing a little bit the same. Let's see. Man, it really kind of is just, this triangle is just so good. Or maybe it's just that the rest of my triangles are so bad. The bot is, at least for my automates, it's kind of fixated, right? If you look at the other options, it's very little competition. It's a 70, 78, 73, 72. We're counting down at this point, right? This is technically the fastest dark we can build. So, I don't know. From here, you know, maybe we could do other things. We could kind of reel in the physical offense focus, maybe. Or more likely, what we should probably do is maybe just give it like restricted sets. Maybe something along these lines. I mean, what you could also do in this case, if you know that, like, the problem is I do have like a weird slow speed square, but probably like for general use, if you, I don't know, or just like for your own use, you could restrict it from even seeing that speed set by doing that, right? No outside set means it can't consider anything you haven't selected. This is kind of what I mean by like, I am now doing work on this definition that you wouldn't really need to do for a global loadout publish, right? There is things that a public loadout needs that a personal loadout wouldn't, and there is things that a personal loadout would want that could kind of make the loadout terrible for other people, right? That's kind of what I mean when I say that there's a bit of an art form to this happening. And also part of the problem is we've given it a required minimum of 219, and with the speed being so low, its options are kind of weirdly limited. We could just say, I don't know, speed is fine, whatever. Maybe go a little bit above it, or it's fine to take some. Let's see how it does now. Yeah, we see it is going back for that speed arrow too. Yeah, I don't know. I guess kind of just taking this as a wake-up call. I don't really have that many good slow offense mods. It's actually being very, very aggressive about sticking to the minimums for once. This is a little bit surprising to me. What if we turn roundup off? I'm curious. This might be a bug. So I think, you know, kind of going back and forth with this, I think kind of the biggest issue here is that the speed is so low for this target, because this is technically all Dark Trooper needs to satisfy this requirement, right? If we round back up to make sure. 1200 is a requirement that I know my Dark can't hit. And also probably a lot of people's Darks can't hit. Maybe we just need to kind of settle. I mean, we know that if we're making this for personal usage, we know that 11800 is kind of our personal cap. We could maybe dump this down to 11500. It is by no means a bad number. Yeah, my offense depth is kind of bad, so I think to some degree that's also why we're seeing some struggles here. All right, I would love it to not reach for this speed arrow, but I think just because my speed is so kind of hit or miss that, yeah, I think for our personal usage, for me, if I'm making a loadout for myself, I would probably just only select the offense primary. And if we do that, like, watch. I can tell you from experience, this is just gonna give me exactly what I want immediately. I'm kind of trying to simultaneously teach you for other people at once as well as itself. And if anything, like, yeah, this is our second best mod, and it's kind of, we see it's sticking much better to the speed smoothing now. It even, you know, we gave it 11.5 and it gave us 11.7, and we don't really steal any mods. These are the mods that I pretty much always like to reach for my Dark Trooper anyway. So, you know, it did this with a 6E, or with a 5 dot, right? We could even, well, I don't know. We have to do this necessarily. Like, it gave us a build that's actually pretty good. This actually might be closer to my cap, which is kind of crazy. Like, so the automate does have simulate mods at 60. To be honest, I haven't really used this that much, but let's see. I'm assuming it'll reach for the same triangle. Strange, it changed his mind. I thought they had it pretty figured out before. I don't know, either way, the bot doesn't necessarily... Maybe it only does it with 5A mods, I don't know for sure. Because, right, it would have to, like... There's 2 slices left on this, maybe you just kind of can't do it. But actually, yeah, this mod has some potential for, like, a slow, heavy Dark Trooper cannon. At least for my collection. This is how desperate I am right now. This is, we're on some real sad hours. But hey, it gave us an 11.7 Dark Trooper with the 5 dot. Offense primary. It's not bad. This is probably 11.85. Maybe bordering 11.9. I don't know the math offhand. But yeah, honestly, I'm kind of down to take this. It's, I don't know. What? Yeah, the lower speeds get, the more finicky things can become, especially if you do a lot of selling of your slowest mods, right? We're looking for a very low average, and we just don't have mods at this speed, right? If we sort by speed, you can kind of see it, right? It's all unsliced from like the 8 to 4 speed range. I wanted to make sure that the bot wasn't taking any faster mods that I might want to use for other characters, but as a result, the bot was kind of struggling with saying like, hey, you know, you gotta give me something to work with here, right? And you can see it's even reaching for crit damage because I just don't have that many good offense-focused sets that aren't also just kind of moonlighting as race sets, right? For better or for worse. So, I think we leave Dark Trooper there. That's a kind of decent example of, you do just kind of have to do a little bit of push-pull sometimes. What we did there was kind of more for refining personal collections. And again, like some of the stuff we did, I mean, I think it kind of depends. You also kind of have to know the loadout you're making, right? If you are working with a faster, like a 250-ish Dark Trooper, I think speed arrow back on would be fine. You kind of need to, right? Because people aren't going to have those type of offense arrows just kind of lying around. They might not have any at all. But, yeah, it's kind of personal choice, right? And you could do something like this if you really want to just try to keep it to relevant combat stats. Kind of your call. But yeah, I think that's a pretty straightforward explanation there. Oh, quick thing. It's a capital ship driver. We have this option, prioritize 60 pilots. Works pretty well. I don't feel the need to babysit people's Zetas, to be honest. Like, it's whatever, right? Like, I try to build my loadouts. You know, people have whatever mods they have to work with. People have whatever relics they have to work with. I know a lot of guilds work in terms of minimum stats. Your Ray has to have 200,000. Ray has to have 11,000 offense, right? I try to stay a little bit more flexible. This is purely just a style thing, right? I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do this, right? And I would guess all I kind of read into this is you don't really need to do this because all you're doing anyway is if you just tell it, hey, must use crit damage, or in this case, I think you would probably go like must use offense or crit damage. You could go this route as well. And yeah, offense or potency, protection, speeder offense, probably offense. Fears does not need to be fast. And then one other thing we would need to do here is we do have one other kind of relative check. There's a few ways you could do this. I'm man, there's a fancier way and there's also like a bare minimum check. What we're looking for here is we need to make sure Veers is under range. Now there is another possible concern depending on how you plan to use your troopers. Veers can either proc range assist or do Gideon mass assist, and Veers can give himself speed up. I almost wonder if there's a call. I don't think this is the right way to do this exactly. There's for a variety of reasons. But there would be a call to kind of do something along the lines of this, I want to say. Where if he happens to gain 10% centimeter, the problem is, right, we're missing the whole this. But the problem is this isn't actually what he's basing off of, right? We are working off of a theoretical range speed that doesn't exist. But also this would have to happen off of Gideon and Piet. So I'm not exactly sure what the right call here is. If you're watching this, chances are you might and I'm not. And if you know them in the comments, I would love to read it. Because, yeah, for the most part, I honestly just kind of made sure Veers was under range in the past. Sometimes he would get over. I never really found it to really matter too much in most battles that I did. But there is kind of a call where you need to try to factor for the speed up potentially. But hey, it's here. It's kind of whatever to me. So yeah, you could just do this. And I think this is kind of fine as well, right? This is functional for kind of what you need it to be. And so, that kind of rounds up the trooper loadout. He is crazy on speed. I didn't really go through his weighting. Sorry, I accidentally hit the wiki. Whatever that is. And, you know, physical damage, good. Potency, good. Crit chance, solid. Depending on what you're doing. Maybe you don't want him to crit, but we'll say good here. Speed, it's whatever. We'll put in a little bit. Protection, some health, doesn't hurt. And yeah, you know, you could put in whatever desired crit chance, desired offense, crit damage. You know, maybe we do want to give it like a high crit damage weighting. If it is, almost missed the check mark. If it is choosing between offense and crit damage set, it will basically look at the weighting that you have between physical damage and physical offense. So, you know, it's looking at this right now and saying like, he really, really wants crit damage and he only kind of wants offense. So this should lead to favoritism where we should end up getting a Veers that is probably going to land on crit damage set. Actually it does not. We could also tell it no broken sets. Of course. And in this case, we probably don't want it to be broken. We're looking for combat stats more than anything else. And we're not necessarily telling it like, hey, he must have, you know, what, 70% crit chance or anything like that. So the more fast and loose you are with it, the more fast and loose the results will be at sometimes. But hey, it just kind of depends on what you want it to do, right? We could tell it, hey, give me 7,500 damage, give me 65% crit chance, and it will very likely say yes, sir. And even, why are we getting health set? Must use any kind of just means pick one from any of them. So no outside sets might actually have been the right call after all. I think I was correct with my initial hunch. This should result in one of the offense or crit damage set as well as a crit chance set. And done. Yeah. The problem is we have given him a requirement that is, yeah, pretty much impossible, right? It's a minimum of 139, a max of 209. He's working with the worst of the worst. Like, we don't even have speedless options in this slot. They have been sold or they have been sliced. So, you know, I think at this point, kind of depends on knowing your troopers. I don't even think you would necessarily want this. You can actually include this. You can have multiple minimums, and it will just pick whichever one is higher. So I guess we could technically leave it. Let's go, let's just say 190 is a number. Or again, if you had the clocking for Veers being 10% off of range, or whatever range effective is at, it actually might just be 0.1 extra under Gideon, but the problem is we have already reached, right? We did not do this real quick. Okay. Plus 20. Did we just skip range? I didn't realize it. So Piet into Stark into Dark. This is 0.4. This is also like borderline speedless, if not actually speedless. But I guess we'll do the diligence. Let's double check and make sure. Yeah, required minimum 123. Fantastic. I think honestly, let's just go in. We could do two things. We could say speed max -1, and let's go dark. Just kind of saying to make sure that range won't go third, like won't mess with the turn order. You can kind of build these fail safes where you feel necessary. They aren't necessarily needed if you're building stuff correctly elsewhere, but you know, maybe you could give like a max speed cap at 10. Like 2 maximums also isn't going to cause us any issues. But maybe you could also just say like, hey, range minimum speed 200. If we back out now, you can kind of see, ooh, we just gave him an impossible range. That's because we gave a max base off of 10 of the really low one. That is quite literally an impossible build, and the bot will just kind of hang. So be careful of that. And here we go. Here is much healthier, right? We have a Dark Trooper 219. We have a range 210. I think we're feeling pretty happy with this. Let's make sure we round up on... I guess we don't really need to. I technically do on this, but like because it's not possible, you kind of don't. So yeah. 200 to 218, I think I'm fine with that. And then for here, that will give us 190 to 209. That also sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. You know, be careful about the calls that I gave. There is still some of those concerns, but you know, once you get into high percent turn meter gains for troopers, things really do just kind of get silly. At that point, you're just kind of making sure the speeds are correct. This is almost just a proof more than anything. I mean, especially if you know that this is just a silly number, you could also just delete this. All right. And yeah, that kind of seems like it. I think we could just go for the full automate. So when I'm doing this myself for personal use, I usually just kind of go down the line. I'm kind of automating each one by one to show you A, what's working and what isn't, kind of some mistakes, some tricks and stuff like that. But for the most part, you are just going to want to click on reorder by, or if targets fail, and you kind of just build the automation. Hey, like trial and error is good. I do kind of recommend doing what I'm doing in single target automating while you're learning. Once you're experienced and comfortable with this, I think you would just kind of shoot down the list, give everyone what they need, run an automate, and just kind of go from there, right? And then you just start to tweak. We'll just kind of let it run through real quick. All right. So it did take a little bit longer, you know, with the reorder on failed target. It does kind of do some extra work just to kind of make sure things are going smoothly. But overall, that was still, you know, less than a minute for 8 characters. Not bad. With, you know, pretty complex sets. And we did, you know, there are ways to build loadouts to be as fast as possible. And there are ways to build loadouts to try to, like, you know, we did a lot of tweaking to try to conserve speed. We did a lot of tweaking to try to conserve, like, our best mods for other characters. So it's, you know, very little surprise to me overall that some of these lower characters are just kind of getting some really crazy results, right? Because we don't have that many speedless mods, especially. Like, if you wanted an easier automate, I think you would almost just maybe, like... I think you could even just say, like, -11 of Dark Trooper. If you really wanted, and this would give us a minimum that is, like, yeah, 212 to 222. It's higher, it's technically wasted speed. Depending on your mod collection, it might be easier for you. You know, but you might not have many 5 speeds lying around. You might have more 10 speeds or along those lines, right? So something to keep in mind there. As speed gets lower, the bot can experience more of a challenge. A, you hit the mid tier where there's a ton of mods. It just takes a long while for it to check everything. And then B, you start to get low and you obtain a lot of mods when they're low, but you don't necessarily keep them, right? So just something to think about there. I think we'll just kind of leave this as is for now. Honestly, okay, we just changed him. We could just use the continue button. We could just redraft them. We gave range a little bit more speed. If we were doing a multi-team loadout, you know, we see range is kind of stealing some premium mods from some characters who would not like to have them stolen. I think we could also probably redraft him a little bit just to make sure. I don't necessarily want him taking the good stuff from people, right? But we also kind of went through him pretty quickly. You know, but we could have given him weights and sets and primaries as well. Actually, if anything, with how it's struggling, we probably should. Usually if the bot's struggling, it means that you haven't given it much to work with, or you've given it something impossible. In my experience. Let's give it some business to chew on, right? Shall we? For damage, offense, protection. I think we always go offense. He's so slow that, like, even if you don't have that many offense options, you should have something. Like, honestly, if you I don't even think you would want protection arrow for this. Or speed arrow. I think you would rather go, like, protection or health if you have those available. And then must use any, must use these. I think this seems fine. Let's do a continue off of range one more time. Let's see how it does. 14 speed average. It is kind of bumping up his cost on other mods. It is kind of reaching for some of our better mods that maybe we don't want to give it. So maybe we do. Maybe we let him back in. Maybe we give him the speed arrow. And let's do one more. And you'll notice that as we get more specific, you will notice the results are flying in much, much faster as well. That is not a coincidence. And yeah, look at this. We got a pretty fast result. This is a pretty mediocre range trooper, but that is exactly what I want. I don't want him to be the all-star. He is not stealing our best mods by any means. He took a little bit of a premium arrow, but, you know, as prioritization takes over, this mod will not necessarily take over if we're working on other teams as well. Range is going to be, you know, pretty low on this list. But hey, for one team purposes, if we just want a good trooper loadout, there you go. It's as good or as mediocre as you want it to be. Let's see. We gave him a 379. I don't even remember doing that. Let's go 378. Let's be a little bit pickier. Do one more automate. We did do a little bit of time improvements. Let's see how long it takes this time. All right. And yeah, we ran it again. Let's see. Everything looks pretty good. 378. We did actually just give it min 378, max 378. And for us, that worked. Again, a little bit of a dangerous game there, but this is a desired minimum to max. So I don't know. I actually think I kind of like this more. Not bad. Bit of a aggressive PA. We didn't really cap him though. Yeah, I think we'll kind of leave this be. 340, I believe, off of 378 is correct. I think a little bit post-launch, we might have the decimal result just to make sure that, like, you know, maybe this was like near 339 flat. Can't say for certain, but I think it seems loosely correct. And yeah, 268 gives 268. 259, get rounded up to 60. We could do some speed capping, but I think just as kind of an example demo, right? You can put as much work into this or as little work into this as you want, right? You know, range, here we are at 212, veers chilling down at 190 now. Again, when you get down to the low speeds, I would kind of make sure that the bot isn't reaching for incomplete sets. You know, if you're like me, you're not necessarily always thinking every mod to 15, and so maybe it will grab one that isn't actually fully done yet. And you know, if you set targets, it won't necessarily be able to do that. That's up to you, or you just make them faster, or grab other better mods, or set other requirements, or whatever have you, right? You can set as many targets or as few targets as you want. I tend to be hands-off on this, and I think you all kind of get the idea, right? If you wanted, you could just go required physical damage 6,500. It's a random number. I don't know if that's significant for viewers. Speed, special crit chance. For me, for 3v3, this is something that is in one of my loadouts. Like special crit chance 85 is difficult to hit, but that will be in one of my builds, right? You have this full suite of stat options, and yeah, that's the world is your oyster. Just kind of choose what you would like to do here. All right, so there's a couple of things from here. So we have a way to export the loadout definitions. This is everything we just set. We can go to create. We can go fatals 378 Gideon. And then for category, we have 5v5 and 3v3 at the top here. You can think of those as PvP. So 5v5, the 5v5 trooper loadout. And description, you don't have to make one, but you can also say, I made a 378 Gideon. You won't necessarily see all these options down here, but you will see sharing. And so you have a floppy disk, which is a save button, and this, which is a load button. This is a way for you to store a group of ally codes. This could be, I mean, you see there's a guild select option, there's an alliance select option. But if you're, a content creator or you just got some friends you want to send these to, you can click load and you can pull these up, and you will just have them accessible to send to whenever. Right? Not bad. Not too shabby at all. And if you add some to this list, you can go ahead and click the floppy disk, and it will save them for future use. So, not bad at all. So we can click export, and then we will see it in the lists. And one other thing you could do is, if you have this mod set up that you are happy with, of course, we saved the settings. We haven't actually saved the mods yet, so let's go to File, let's go to Save As. Let's say, oh, the jig is up. It's the second take. I have already done this. But, yes. Do the exact same thing. Make sure that you have include loadout definition checked. And then, I'm just going to cheat. I'm not going to save it since we already did. It's currently bugged. I am going to have to cheat slightly here. The timestamp is going all the way back to 1970, which is weird. That bug literally didn't start until last night. I've been using this for a few weeks now. Never happens. I guarantee. If we go to date, not there. Name. There. So, we had the loadout here, right? But pretend we just saved it and not back from 1970. Let's hop in the time machine. Let's click the edit button. And this is effectively the same as loading up that loadout definition, right? Because they're linked together. We are now just back in here, right? Maybe we go through a territory war and you're like, man, 378 Gideon just wasn't enough. What we really need is 390. You just do that. You can click check. You can re-export that template, or you can like re-automate. I'm not gonna click it because it won't work, because 390 is a lot. But you get the idea, right? You can just rinse and repeat the process, do whatever tweaks you feel like. You can also re-export the template using replace. I have a lot, so right. You can click it here. You see it already pulls in everything. We deleted all the shares, so you're not seeing them. But yeah, right. Then you would just go down to the bottom, click export. All your changes have been saved. And yeah, so that's the process for starting from scratch. There is a little bit more to talk about. So we do have Grand Ivory import. You can see, I'll do it as proof. This is just some Secrets and Shadows template from Prime Force. He just kind of based it off the videos. You can see it does have, stat weightings imported. I don't think this necessarily has too much involved, but you can kind of see, right? It does have a lot to work with. It does seem like Grand Ivory probably also had a stat weighting system, and it does seem to be porting pretty nicely. But there also is the template import. So I think just for whatever purposes, let's go ahead and import 50 cam, one that probably is most broadly known in the community. And yeah, you can see, so with template imports, they don't have the same amount of data as definitions do. And so you'll see like it is kind of defaulting back to normal weights, as well as, so we have some of the requirements, right? I mean, this is the stuff you would see in the bot. And we do have like some of the primaries, sets, that's there. But, so for example, we see speed and crit avoid, right? Which is correct. But with the default weights or with zeros, it's not going to reach for that crit avoid. What you would want to do, two possible things. You could tell it, hey, crit avoidance, like super high priority. And so if it has the option, it's probably just going to reach for it. Or you could do one of two things. You could say, maybe like you could say desired crit avoidance minimum 35 if you wanted to demand require or desire a 6 dot, or you could say 24 or 5 dot. Kind of up to you. That is probably up to your call, your personal use call, and whether you think other people will have it or should have it. I actually wonder if only we could simulate this. So one way that the desired system works is it goes top to bottom, and if a bottom one fails, the bottom one gets scrapped and it will keep the rest. But I wonder if you could actually do this. I don't actually know that for certain. I would be curious if anyone who doesn't have a 6 dot crit avoid yet could like try this and tell me. Again, in the comments if you don't mind. I bet that this would work. I bet that this would check for 5 dot, grab it, and then check for 6 dot effectively, see none, and then just be like, all right, this isn't happening, but this can happen, right? That's kind of tricky. I didn't think about that. I'm gonna message the developer. I wonder if that actually is a legit workaround. Let me screen cap right now. Neat. Right, so the whole point of what I'm trying to illustrate here is if you do a template import, it is going to do some of the work for you, but there is some amount of polish I would say you need to do, right? You know, let's grab some speed, grab some defense. That's special damage. Grab some defense. You know, kind of whatever you're looking for in your Rex. Yeah, you would kind of go down the line. Again, for everyone who is looking for crit avoid, I think you would be kind of looking for those options where you have it. And yeah, you know, just make sure, you know, we do see speed at our offense and health sets. This all looks pretty good to me. But, you know, the one other thing that you should be careful of is it looks like on template imports. So, you know, on 50 cam, there is a slow echo and a fast echo. It looks like it just kind of imported both onto the same character at once. So it's going to be, in some ways, you're going to get a mix of both, right? You're going to get a minimum of a fast echo speed, and you're going to get a minimum of a slow echo offense. So I would definitely just go through. It looks like it's like these are the stats for fast echo. You could just delete one, right? I will also just have a 50 cam loadout available. So you shouldn't have to do this, ideally. Or maybe I could just have one for fast echo and one for slow echo. It would probably be the reality of the situation. But yeah, you know, just make sure if you happen to have any character overlaps like that, it looks like it can just double up. The rest of it doesn't look like it was affected too badly. And same exact situation, right? Maybe some crit chance, maybe some crit damage, crit avoid for sure. Special damage. I don't think you really need to do both, right? Because if it's doing one, it's doing the other, right? I feel like you could just delete that. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's what I would do. And yeah, if you really wanted, you know, maybe you look at this and you say like, ooh, my echo can reach so far above 9,500. How dare you require me to reach so low as this? And you could just like, right, yeah, yep, and just go for it, dude. Well, maybe not that high. Right? You can tweak it for whatever personal use you see there. Or hey, you know, a lot of my loadouts are going to have these desired stretch goals to aim for, with the whole idea being that a lot of you might fail it, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just saying, if you got the mods to do it, let's do it. If you don't, no hard feelings, we got the required to fall back on, and we will be fine. So yeah, not bad, right? We could even, again, maybe get rid of the desired max. Desired max feels just a little bit harsh, because I believe the 50 cam requirements tended to be more like suggestion ranges a lot of the time. We would maybe get rid of this. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out once I'm building the 50 cam proper. But yeah, same deal. We need to make sure crit avoid is weighted. Same deal here. Probably. I'm just gonna add this for now and probably end up having to remove it later. I think it's interesting though. I would love to see this. And yeah, you get the idea, right? Just keep in mind, template import will do a lot of the work for you, but don't necessarily mean that you can just import the template, save it immediately, and then just pass it off to people, right? There's a little bit of work to do for you. But I still think, man, potentially, if you're a DW officer or anything like that, massive time saver. Can't recommend it enough. Last but not least, there are some settings. Most of these are just the stuff that we were already going through. This is the one global setting you kind of saw referenced before. You could say, if you just really hate broken sets, you could just toggle this on. Otherwise, leave this be. A lot of this stuff is the automation stuff. Speed smoothing, I really love. I would recommend keeping it on. If you don't, let's do Death Trooper. Death Trooper would probably be the... All right, let's do it quick. Save this for myself. I unchecked Rex. Get back into loadout, Shinji. All right, good stuff. Import 378 was it? Load. Here's just a demo example, right? This is what kind of chaos can happen. Maybe Stark. Stark is a little bit faster. Sure. So we have speed smoothing off. Right? Here's what happens. Yeah. Right? You see, it's kind of just grabbing just whatever speed it feels like. And then it's basically hitting the targets and saying, oh god, we don't have that much room left. Okay, 10 and 5. Right? I love speed smoothing. It was something I requested, and if you are like me, I highly recommend leaving it on. Now, 30 is the weight I've worked with a lot of the time. It's not some magic number. Try other values. Maybe, try, experiment, see what works for you. There's no right or wrong answer there that I'm aware of. And yeah, as well with the other simulation settings, there is a max check number. The default was around like 200,000, and I kind of left it at that. Obviously, if you bump this up, then it will take longer. Apparently, the developer would like commonly just like add a 0, do 2 million. Let's see how long it takes comparatively. You're just allowing it to check for more mod combinations just to make sure it's like looking through your whole collection. Because what it'll do is it'll find something that satisfies it and then do like as much extra checking as you allow it to. That's the number you're selecting. And, that's... Alright, that actually wasn't that much longer for the number we gave it, right? We see with speed smoothing, this is a Stark that I would love to lock in with. He's perfectly average, and I love him for it. And yeah, alright. I think that's about it for this. Is there anything else that I'm thinking of that I'm missing here? There's a review feature that honestly I don't fully understand. I believe it's just saying that you can compare between what it just came up with here and your loadout. Let's try. So I guess it's just, yeah, it's pulling up. We can see the differences here between a loadout we already had saved and what we have now. I guess it's also just a way to like, hey, quality control your loadout. What's going on here? It looks like our Veers is, yeah, kind of going rogue, but 182 speed is also pretty brutal. I think we automated some people and that kicked his speed minimum even lower, so he's kind of in chaos right now. That's what happens when you don't run a full automation. Like, you should never save this loadout without just going back to the top and making sure you just do a top to bottom. Or at the very least, if you know, like, hey, Gideon's still intact, PS still intact, maybe you just go and make sure, like, hit a continue wherever you know that you are messing with things, for sure. Because, yeah, Veers got hurt. And you never really want Veers to get hurt. And, yeah, I believe that touches on just about everything. Requirement summary is a tab here. It's very cold, it's very notepad-ish, but this is where you can kind of visualize all of these settings that we have made in this guide tonight. It's a pretty extensive list overall, right? And yeah, you got your imports, you got the browser list here. This is where you will see the stuff you have saved, as well as a lot of the stuff that I will be offering to the public, as well as some other people. Yeah, this list is massive. You won't necessarily see this many on launch. There's a lot of polish work I'm going to do to make sure that it is as friendly or compatible to people as possible. And yeah, if you try any of these loadouts and maybe they're just not working for you, maybe, I do have kind of this tiering system. If I search by tier, you'll see I have like A tier, B tier, C tier. This is A tier is like for people with really, really high-end mod depth. This is just kind of me saying, hey, we got the options, let's just do some crazy stuff, right? B tier is a little bit more reserved. It's for like, you're probably like somewhat of an end game player. You got like a decent 20 plus collection. This is kind of trying to work with you there. C tier is more targeting, usually kind of like a 15 speed average, right? I'm just trying to set baseline levels. Everyone's got different characters, everyone's got different mods. Just trying to reach a point where you can find a tier that works for you. And hey, maybe you find C tier, maybe C tier is a little bit too low for you, but B tier isn't quite enough. There is the option to tweak. Unfortunately, I can't necessarily customize for everyone, but I think these should offer you, it'll be a heck of a lot better than the 50 cam import, right? You won't have to do any work of yourself. It's just going to be, you pull in the work that I've done, maybe you see some stuff you don't like, maybe you see some stuff you want to try, go crazy. Let me know how all this stuff works for you. Definitely excited to hear it. And yeah, happy hunting, man. Thanks for watching.